Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots. Who live your shills, house, lace, serfs, peasants, vassals? Banker scum, banker bashers, banker scum from Ireland, banker scum from Italy, banker scum from the USA. I'm a useful idiot, and today I want to have a story that's a good follow-up to my banker scum videos from Italy and Ireland have been exposed. Because I want to reassure you that banker scum are continually active in the United States as they are all over the globe. So Italy and Ireland certainly do not have a monopoly on banks that have a monopoly. So let's get to this story. So the Federal Reserve has given Goldman Sachs 2 more years to comply with the requirement that it divest part of its derivative business to a separately capitalized unit. And as usual, Goldman Sachs is not alone. Just last month, Bank of America, JP Morgan, and all the other too big to fail banks on Wall Street were granted the same 2-year stay. And the rule that they have sidestepped for 2 more years is known as the Lincoln Rule. And the measure was to set up to have riskier credit derivatives trades take place in a separately capitalized unit so that any trading failure there would not have access to the institution's commercial bank division, which is backed by insured deposits and taxpayers through the Federal Reserve's discount window. So there's the crux of it. And we can remember that back in 2011, Bank of America moved their entire derivatives unit that they inherited with Merrill Lynch. Merrill Lynch was a complete cowboy in the derivatives market. So Bank of America already a couple of years ago moved all the derivatives exposure from the Merrill Lynch portfolio to their commercial bank. And just like I pointed out with that rule, it now makes sure that all the derivatives exposure that Bank of America has is exposed to the taxpayers, and that's what this is all about. So we have Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, JP Morgan, all the banks have now made sure that they are going to keep all their derivatives exposure tied to their commercial banks, so that should they have a trading fail, and they need another bailout, and there's exposure to taxpayers, and the taxpayers will get it first, as well as other depositors. Because this moving it into the commercial bank and keeping this exposure in the commercial bank makes them liable to be covered by the FDIC should one of these banks fail. Of course, here we have moral hazard again. They can indulge in this kind of behavior and this kind of exposure because they know that they're too big to fail. The government will bail them out. And here we have another example of why they feel that way, because the Federal Reserve under Ben Bernanke and under the Barack Obama administration is now given all the big banks another 2-year free ride. This is a huge concession, and this is just another example of how all these banks have fought tooth and nail. They're still fighting against the new Basel III international banking outlines that are supposed to rope in all these banks, and they've managed to try and turn back every single piece of legislation that was going to re-regulate these banks as a result of the last banking catastrophe. And needless to say, everyone that watches me knows that we're set up for another huge banking collapse and more calamity in the financial markets. Another part of this story that I've been following that I didn't do a video on yet that was interesting is having Gensler over at the commodities outfit, who was going after the derivatives market for the Obama administration. He was going a little too enthusiastically trying to rein in derivatives market and force certain clauses in the Dodd-Frank Act. And so now we're having Obama oust him. But the story turned out to be not much of a story, because Gensler, of course, will be in office long enough that all he has to do is nothing, sit on it, and this act from the Dodd-Frank bill will go into effect, and these banks will have to lose some of their ability to monopolize the derivatives market, which is what this is all about. The big cash cow for all the too big to fail banks are the derivatives market, and that's one of the major factors in sinking the economy 5 years ago. It continues to haunt us. We still have this huge nightmare behind the scenes in all the banks tied to mortgage-backed securities and all this toxic crap It's still out there. It never went away, no matter how much of it they managed to deal with. There's way too much of it. And so anyway, the banks have to find a way to bury all the crap they still have and yet continue to generate this huge market in derivatives and counterparty risk. And the government is, of course, on board with this, and that's why I say the Barack Obama administration is trying to get a little Gensler for being too tough on the bank's derivative business, and now we have bipartisan bills in the House and Senate. And let me point out again here today, bipartisan bills. So once again, when it comes to the big issues like the surveillance police state, and in this case protecting the big banks' interests, the Republicans and Republicans walk hand in hand to serve their masters. So we have bipartisan bills in the House and Senate seeking to transform the provision allowing commodity, equity, and credit derivatives tied to asset-backed securities to take place in the federally insured bank. So even the United States government is moving to have legislation to help the banks continue to have all these derivatives tied to commodities, equity, and credit tied to the federally insured bank to make sure that if something goes wrong, the taxpayers are going to be exposed to massive losses and counterparty risk. And once again, having to go back to these mortgage-backed securities. And needless to say, we have a number of classes of asset-backed securities to be worried about there, including the student debt. All that has been collateralized and securitized as well. So we have a lot of bonds out there in the system tied to derivatives. And here we go, the government and the banks and corporations walking hand in hand to make sure that the taxpayers and the citizens continue to pay for their folly. So here we go. Banker scum exposed in America, joining the international club. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too. And remember, if I agreed with you, then we'd both be wrong.